I need you to build a new attraction. You won't create the main entrance now because we're only going to open the park when it has at least a few attractions. Let's focus on that for now. Ooh, and we will have to reimburse those who booked tables at Le Couscouze. But let's talk about the next project. Some species of Abelisaurids are quite popular in Brazil, including the species that live there. Unfortunately, the genetic material of those species hasn't been discovered yet, but we could replace them with other popular species, Majungassaurus and Carnotaurus. You have to create an interesting attraction for them with the gyrosphere. Start now.
Hi everyone, this is C1IO. I've been on vacation this whole time, but you heard Marilyn say she wants an attraction with Abelisaurids and the gyrosphere, and I came up with something. Encounter with Abelisaurids. Besides visitors having close contact with the dinosaurs in the gyrosphere, I thought about adding a second part to the attraction inspired by the meeting with gentle giants from the original Jurassic World, which is basically a petting zoo. But the problem is that Abelisaurids are carnivorous, right? So I'm going to make a small tunnel that only the juveniles will be able to cross. But even as juveniles, they are dangerous. So we will create a fence with a small space for visitors to feed them with a long skewer. Now let's move on to the design concepts. To create this attraction, I'm inspired by theme parks around the world, like Disney and Universal parks, and I will explain why. These parks have very exaggerated themed decorations at the entrance of each ride, and since I think the Abelisaurids are incredible, they deserve to have a themed entrance for the attraction. Especially the Carnotaurus. It's too iconic to be just a casual attraction on the corner of any old park. It has to have drama. It has to be exaggerated. I have something not so nice to tell you. At least if you've been watching me for a long time. I think I will just be direct. Anyway, if you like my videos and my builds, I'm sorry to say this, but you are extremely cringe. Very cringe, because I am very cringe, always. But it's okay, cringe lives matter too. Let's be cringe together because the design will be more scenic and thematic. In other words, cringe. I think you guys don't understand this concept at all, so I will try to explain. I made this round structure because I wanted to make a biodome, but I realized it's not necessary to do that with a desert, since Sobro Island has a hot climate. So, despite being the design, I gave up on making the biodome. I want to make waves on the walls to reference dunes and deserts. I'm going to make the walls with very simple art that tries to replicate a desert environment. The attraction will have the main habitat, the feeding area for the hatchlings back here, and an operational area to the side. But we won't focus on the operational part today. To create the entrance, I want to build concrete arches with rocks and light posts with Jurassic World flags. On the facade, I want to add more rock arches as if the rocks are calling us, guiding us to the attraction. And since the habitat will be arid, I will put desert rocks at the entrance to make it more thematic. This will take a while because I'm going to put in so many rocks that the guy who wrote the Pocahontas song would be proud. That's the level I want my rocks to be. On the facade, I will put panels with the skulls of Majungassaurus and Carnotaurus, and that round thing in the middle is meant to be a giant dinosaur eye. I said it was going to be scenic, didn't I? Now let's begin. I started by making the walls in the shape of dune waves, then I put them on a wall for a quick test. Now I've started making the three panels using the letter I. Although it's simple, it takes quite a while because there are many small pieces to place. Now I'm starting the concrete arch filled with desert rocks to indicate that it's an arid habitat. The difficulty here is creating curves in more than one direction at the same time, because the shapes are only rectangular or square. There aren't many triangles free from the grid. I was having trouble hiding the points. I even put some columns to disguise them, but it looked awful. So I deleted them and decided to leave these points exposed on the inside of the arch. It doesn't make a difference because it will be covered in rocks. I finished the arch and took a screenshot to plan it. This was the idea I had. Instead of putting the skull panels on the gyrosphere's facade, I preferred to put them at the entrance. I started creating this fence but didn't like it, so I redid everything. Now we're going to make the skull panels, and we will start with the Majungassaurus. It surprised me that despite being something simple, it takes a long time to finish. Putting each piece in the right place takes a long time. I'm using the fonts again, and I decided to make the skull in the style of the Jurassic Park franchise logo, with only 3 fenestrae. I confess that it felt strange not to see the 4th fenestra, but that's the style of the franchise. I also made the Carnotaurus skull panel and a Carnotaurus panel. I'm not going to show the process because it will be torture for you. Man, at that point I got carried away with the theme and started to exaggerate. I decided to bring the arid aspect out here, to the entrance. But not only that, I decided I wanted to do something stranger and a little scary, so I wanted to make a bathroom with a very peculiar design in a hide place. It's important to have some structure here for people to wait for those who are on the attraction. This bathroom started to look so strange, exactly as I wanted. Almost as if it were an area of another planet, another universe, and I swear I was sober. Now I've selected some plants to create a desolate area, and I've also created a tree. Then I thought, how can I make everything more exaggerated and like a theme park? Let's add lightning bolts, right? I remembered that oscillating light and I did a test. I realized that its timer was based on the time I set it, so it was possible to make segments of light shine at different times. So I did this quick test without worrying too much about the rhythm of the light, and it worked. It can be improved a lot if I speed up the light, but before spending my time creating a really perfect lightning bolt, I thought, what happens to the lights when I load the game? Will the game save each moment that each light has to shine? I don't think so. So fortunately, before spending more time, I tested and saw that the game really doesn't save the timing of the lights. What a shame! It would be awesome to have several lightning bolts shining in the distance on the attraction's facade. Now let's continue. I added more volume to the domes on the walls. Then I painted the top part blue to mimic the sky. It's a technique used in real zoos to trick the animals into thinking there's more space. I really felt it was necessary to do this here because the walls I'm going to use are absurdly high. I used stickers to create some effects and clouds. Then I went on to finish the wall. Initially, I was going to divide the habitat for each species, but I saw that the space would be too small, and since they like each other, I decided to leave them together. I was about to start making the habitat, but I decided I overdid at the entrance by putting the Arid theme there, so I correct that. I removed the bathroom and stored it back there in case we decided to use it later. Then I started working on the gyrosphere and the facade of the attraction itself. I wanted something similar to the arch we created, as if waves of rocks were passing underground and rising sometimes. And on the facade, we're going to make these really giant waves that will enter the habitat, as if these waves were guiding us to a desert. And in the middle of all that, I also started making our big eye. I even did some tests to see if there were translucent materials, and there are, but I prefer the sphere. So I just continued building our facade and whoa, I'm putting so many rocks here at the entrance that I can't take it anymore. I want the person who wrote the Pocahontas songs to go to. Now I gave up on making this scarier and super exaggerated theme at the entrance. I decided to do something more common. I decided to make an Abelisaurids souvenir shop, something inspired by the JPOG shop that has the giant T-Rex balloon, so I started making a Carnotaurus balloon. Speaking of JPOG, I remembered that Douglas from Jurassic Legacy is looking for people to help him finish a mod in JPOG. I'm not involved in this project, so I don't know the details, but he needs people who know how to animate and import dinosaur models into JPOG and create structures as well. So if you know someone who knows how to do this and is passionate about JPOG, pass Douglas contact information to him. I will leave it in the video description. Back to the balloon. As you can see, it went very wrong. If we stop to think about it, the Carno design was cool and would have looked nicer if it had been more precise. But this game isn't made for building statues, sculptures, or balloons, so it's difficult. Anyway, I deleted and gave up on the idea of the Abelisaurus souvenir shop. And since I was making a balloon, I decided to make a modern balloon shop instead. And I got carried away, I made a curved roof, which is very difficult to do with the options we have. So I decided to use curved windows to make a glass roof. I made sure to tilt the roof to make it more realistic because in case of rain the water would drain away. I also created the balloons. I dedicated myself and had fun making the shop. I decided to call it Balloonsaurus. So original. At least I saw that the workshop has a shop called Toysaurus and the two will go well together. It's the beginning of a franchise. But guess what? Once again, after I finished, I decided it didn't match the attraction's entrance, and the little shop went in the trash. I mean, I deleted, but at least I saved it in the workshop. Who knows, maybe I will need it in the future of Jurassic World Brasil. Finally, after all this chaos and wasted time, I decided to just make a rest area. If you are waiting for a little friend to come out of the gyrosphere, you'll be waiting in a comfortable, relaxing, open-air place. That's it. And as it couldn't be otherwise, I also put in a lot of rocks. I used desert rocks to increase the promise that it's an arid habitat. But this time I didn't make a desert out here. I tried to make the environment very natural and consistent with the forest area around the attraction. But the closer to the attraction, the more rocks I put in. Now let's finish the facade. I finished the all-seeing eye and went to see how we look at from a visitor's perspective. It's so big. It's really eye-catching. Man, it's so cringe, even for me. Look at that. I'm going to delete it. At the entrance to the gyrosphere, I decided to create another waiting area for visitors with a good view of the enclosure. Oh, and of course, rocks. They can't be missing, so many rocks. Finally, we finished the gyrosphere and it was time to create the habitat. And guess how I'm going to start? That's right, deleting things. I realized it, the wall looked too scenic, so I decided to remove the domes and tree panels to make room for rocky mounds and real vegetation. But I will keep the sky painting because it really works to create the illusion of more space. Now I started creating some rock wall models. I had to use many small overlapping stones to get it the way I wanted. Before decorating the habitat, I made a hole in the wall to create the access tunnel for the baby dinosaurs, because on the other side, there will be an attraction where visitors can feed the babies. So it's important that adults can't get through. This attraction will be purely decorative as it's impossible to make functional, since the petting zoo only works with herbivores. But on the other side, I will put meat feeders to attract the babies. So it will be a nice attraction to observe the babies more calmly and up close. So I created a tunnel that only the babies can fit in. A gate to access the enclosure is essential, so let's make it. Now I finally started decorating the habitat. I began by placing the rock wall models that I created, and there's no much of secret here, just decorate patiently, thousands of rocks, because if I were a visitor after seeing the entrance, I would be very disappointed if the habitat didn't have so many rocks. Then I started with the foliage, and I also created custom trees. I also wanted to make some showers to fill the small pond, and I never imagined that the cannon would be useful. Now all that's missing is the back part where the baby Abelisaurids will be. I wanted to use the Carnotaurus statue, but I haven't unlocked it yet. Here I opened a space so people could feed the baby dinosaurs using large skewers, which is why it's so cramped. I don't recommend putting your hand there, okay? In this place there will be a bucket with pieces of meat and the skewers that will be made available by the staff at specific times, because we don't want the dinosaurs to get sick from eating too much. Anyway, I continued decorating for a while. Until I started on the baby Abelisaurids habitat, placing many rocks and plants until finally I finished. Before we see the final result, let me just say that I will make this park available when we are about halfway through the series. For now, I will only make the decorative panels of the Abelisaurids available because if you are a big fan of these dinosaurs like I am and want decorations of their schools, at least you won't have to create them from scratch. I've also published the Balloon Shop, which goes well with more modern parks. But now let's see the result.
for the next attraction, I will want something colder.